Welcome everyone. So glad you can join us. I know this is a truly a international conference, so we got people in different time zones. So thank you so much for your time. I won't take up too much of the time because I want to give as much time to the students, the panelists who have a really exciting presentation to give. In terms of communication, I will be moderating and I will be monitoring the questions both in the Whova app and in the Zoom. If there's a question that's going to be in the that's from Whova that we're going to ask in the Zoom, I'll go ahead and copy that over. But if you have questions, feel free to sort of ask them as they come up, and we will try to get to them as best we can. But without further ado, I will kick it off for Soomin to go ahead and start sharing the screen and take it from there.
So hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Soomin Lee and I'm presenting today with our research team here at University of Florida with Loraine, Priya, and Nazanin under the guidance of Dr. Rizal. Today we are excited to share a work in progress meta-analysis that investigates the effectiveness of AI chatbots and students' cognitive learning outcomes. So we have a beautiful panelist here. So this is our agenda for today. So first, we're going to talk briefly about the conceptualization of AI chatbots. Then we're going to give you a brief overview about why we chose to do meta-analysis on this topic over systematic review, which seems to be more common. And also, we're going to go over past research around this topic and continue with method, results, and end with the discussions and conclusions. So are AI tools really effective is the key question here. So our study, to give you a full disclosure about like how this study started, our study started back in fall 2024 in a meta-analysis class by Dr. Rizal, where the AI tools started to grow really quickly. And it is, of course, still growing very quickly. So it was very natural decision to go to the topic of AI tools at that time, but soon we realized that there's an issue here, that there's just too many AI tools in the world, not only including AI chatbot, but dialogue system, learning companion, intelligent agent, conversational agent, like all that. So we had to narrow down what we are specifically going to focus on, and especially because studies often use different definitions and conceptualizations. That's why we want to briefly go over some concepts that are commonly addressed especially in educational research. So first term is conversational agent, and it is any computer system designed to interact with humans using natural language, whether it is through text or voice. And the idea is to mimic human conversation here. And you probably use one before even without thinking about it, like Alexa or Siri. And this umbrella category includes everything from basic rule-based systems to AI-powered tools. So which means that all AI conversational agent doesn't necessarily have to involve AI. And there's also a term pedagogical agent, which is a educational cousin of conversational agents. So pedagogical agents are virtual characters, sometimes with faces, voices, and even animated gestures that guide students through, especially through multimedia learning environments. And often they're not just used to chat, but actually teach by offering feedback, modeling strategies, and even encouraging motivation. So like if you ever seen a tutorial where a little cute avatar pops up and walk you through a process step by step, that's probably a pedagogical agent here. So to clarify, AI chatbot is a one specific form of conversational agent, and not all like some pedagogical agents could be part of the conversational agents, but only partially because many pedagogical agents are actually lecture-based. So why focus on AI chatbot? Focus on AI chatbot we're focusing on AI chatbots as a specific and widely adopted form of conversational technology, which enables real-time dialogue-based interaction with the learners. And it can provide cognitive support through prompts, explanations, and scaffolding, and it is becoming increasingly more accessible and integrated into educational platforms, which is why we're focusing on the AI chatbot specifically. So in many studies, people use different definitions for their chatbots. But in our study, we define chatbots as interactive dialogue systems that enable text-based or speech-based human-computer interaction through natural language processing, as used in some other studies.
Thank you, Soomin. As you can see, all the team is together here. Hi, I'm Loraine. And we think that we might wondering why use systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And this is the reason, over narrative reviews, systematic reviews and meta-analysis allows to assess existing evidence in a more objective manner, which means that the narrative review it's not, proper, for analyze some kind of data that we have. For example, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, are done following an established and validated process that likely minimize reviewer bias with a methodological approach. While narrative reviews might exclude articles that the researcher doesn't feel that are necessary, the systematic review must contain all the articles that meet the objective. It is also possible, with meta-analysis to get conclusive synthesis. So we will be able to evaluate the overall effect of a treatment across several studies. Now, systematic reviews and meta-analysis aim to collect all available empirical research by employing clearly defined and systematic methods to address a specific question. Both approaches are objective and replicable, focuses on getting all relevant studies related to the question and reviewing and analyzing their findings. But they got differences, and the differences can be, aggruppated by purpose, methodology, output, data requirements, and precision. In this case, we can say that systematic review in general is ideal for a comprehensive qualitative synthesis of evidence, while a meta-analysis builds on by quantitatively pooling data for greater precision and power, provided by the studies there are between them, sufficiently similar. The choice is going to depend on the research question, data availability, the quality of the data, and the need for a statistical summary. In our case, in the case of our meta-analysis, based on the quantity and quality of the data found, our meta-analysis research questions, encompass all of them. So that's the reason because we selected one method over the other. I want to share our experience with regarding the process of running a meta-analysis. And while we understand, that this is a general steps, we invest almost 1 year. We are dedicating, to just cover the first 5 steps. The formulated the problem, searching the literature, gathering information from all the studies, evaluating the quality of the studies, analyzing and integrating the outcome of the studies. And then, maybe the shorter part, is interpreting, the evidence and present the results. Now, you're going to hear in our presentation that we talk about effect size. What is effect size? Measure, this is what we measure in the meta-analysis, and quantifies the magnitude and direction of a treatment or relationship within a study. To perform the meta-analysis, we must find an effect size, which can be summarized across all the studies. So in this figure, you can see the forest plot with all the information that the meta-analysis provides. This is a summarization of the data. Sometimes, the effect size can be directly extracted from the studies, but not all the studies report. So you can also calculate them if the necessary data is provided. For example, if you have a pre-post test, means and standard deviation, and differences, between groups. Here, in the forest plot, you can see, that every study is represented in this summarization. The squares represent not only, the study itself, but also, the weight of the study. And in the right part, you have the effect size, the confidence interval, and the weight. So the diamond in the bottom is the pooled effect. So this is a summarization of all the studies. We don't want to go super deep, in the equations, but common effect size that are measured, usually meta-analysis are Cohen's G, Hedges G, risk and odds radius. We used to use it, for binary data and our square coefficient and determination. In our case, we are using the first two. These are the equations you can see, for the first one is we are interested, in the fact, between, the difference that are in pre and post and between groups in our studies. And we are doing some proper corrections about the variance on the data. So our colleagues, are going to explain to you more in detail. And now we are going to pass, to the research itself.
Okay, coming back. So there, as you guys all know, the use of AI-powered tools in education has been growing rapidly over the past few years. And while when we first started this work in fall 2024, there was only one meta-analysis that we were aware of. But then nowadays, there are like multiple meta-analysis that is addressing the effectiveness of AI chatbot. So as you can see, the overall effect sizes that are reported in those meta-analysis are quite large, ranging from like 0.72 to even 0.964, which almost sounds unrealistic. But these are but relatively the number of studies used are quite small. And these are, as you can see here, there are some common moderators that are used in the previous studies that we are going to briefly go over here. So educational level is one of the moderators that are often mentioned, and the result is mixed because some research reports that primary education is the setting where AI chatbot reports the highest impact, whereas others report that higher education is the best setting. And study intervention seems to be also one important factor that is presented or that is used as moderating variable in many different studies. And it also quite differs as some studies, but with like many studies report that shorter interventions are more effective, which could be an area of more exploration here, considering the novelty effect. And also there are many studies around chatbot type and role, and some studies distinguish between traditional chatbots and LLM, where they found no significant effect between no significant differences between the two, whereas others differentiated between different chatbot roles or the forms. And so as you can see here, there are many different studies going around here. And also in terms of the discipline, like some studies report that AI chatbots were effective, especially in STEM areas, whereas others report it was more effective in social sciences. So here we, based on these prior research, we figure that there's still a research gap. So one aspect is that there is a limited interest in instructional design aspect. For instance, like we don't know if AI chatbots are most effective in inquiry-based learning environment or in like lecture-based environment. So for example, types of task concept provided by like Jonathan authentic task concept could be one that we could focus on. And also there was a limited interest in systematic evaluation of different levels of cognitive outcomes. Like for instance, if we use Bloom's taxonomy, we'll be able to figure out for which kind of cognitive learning outcomes are chatbot most effective for. So based on these research gap, these are the two research questions that we present today. So one, what is the effect of students' use of AI chatbots on cognitive learning outcomes? Second, how does the effect of chatbots on cognitive learning outcomes differ by moderators?
Thank you, Soomin. And hello, I'm Nazanin. So talking about our literature search, after consulting with a librarian, literature from 2022 to June 5th, 2025 was searched systematically from 5 databases, including Web of Science, Scopus, ProQuest, EBSCOhost, IEEE, Explore, and totally we got 1,723 articles. And we use 5 groups of search terms to identify the target literature. We combine the 5 groups of search terms in Boolean search strings, and all the search terms were searched in abstract except the design, because most of the times the authors are talking about this design in the method, so we search for the full text. So those 5 groups you can see are participant, chatbot, generative AI, context, and design. And we developed a comprehensive set of inclusion and exclusion criteria. So talking about the literature type, because we wanted to avoid publication bias, we tried to include all kind of great research, peer review, great conference proceedings, and other great research like dissertation, talking about the language. The studies had to be written in English. And the year, as I mentioned, it was between 2022 and June 5th, 2025. And the study design had to be experimental or quasi-experimental, with having pre-test, post-test, experimental, and control group design. And talking about the intervention, there had to be experimental group with AI chatbot, and the control group didn't have any AI chatbot intervention. And the settings had to be a clear definition of learning content and context. And talking about educational outcome, we just wanted to explore cognitive learning outcomes. So other kind of non-cognitive outcomes were excluded.
Thank you, Nazanin. So now I will walk you through the Prisma chart, which outlines the systematic literature search and screening process for the meta-analysis. So we began by identifying records from 5 different databases, as mentioned by Nazanin previously, which gave us a total of 1,723 publications. We used Covidence, which is a systematic review tool, which helped us remove 683 duplicates automatically, leaving us with 1,040 unique records to review. Our screening process took place in 3 phases. The first phase is title and abstract screening. We screened the titles and abstracts of 1,040 publications. At this stage, 762 irrelevant records were excluded, and leaving us with 278 publications for further review. The second phase is initial full text screening. Next, we conducted a full text review of those 278 publications. We excluded 174 studies that did not include in our inclusion-exclusion criteria, which employ a control experimental pre-post design. Next is we were left with 104 records. In third phase, we did a final full text screening. We screened these 104 publications more closely to ensure they had sufficient and appropriate data for effect size calculation. At this stage, 68 reports were excluded due to missing or unstable data. This resulted us with 35 studies that met the inclusion criteria. These 35 studies formed the final data set for our meta-analysis. And these 35 studies also contributed 96 effect sizes, which allowed us to rigorously examine the impact of AI chatbot interventions. Next, I will explain the first phase of our screening process, which is the title and abstract screening, which reduced the number of publications from 1,040 to 278 records. So in the step 1 is training and on title and abstract screening. So we began by conducting a training session to ensure consistency among all the 4 researchers. We randomly selected 10% of the articles, which is like around 104 records from this training, for this training. All the 4 researchers screened these 104 articles simultaneously inside the same room, and we calculated the inter-rater of reliability to ensure our tagging criteria was applied consistently. And we had an inter-rater reliability of 0.8, which showed the substantial agreement. Step 2 is individual screening. After the training process were done, we moved to the individual screening part. Here, the remaining 90% of the articles, which is 936 records, were divided among the 4 researchers equally, such that each researcher independently screened 234 articles based on the inclusion and exclusion criteria. This allowed us to efficiently process a large number of records while maintaining consistency too. The step 3 was initial tagging results. So by combining the training and individual screening, we eliminated 762 articles that did not meet our inclusion criteria. And in the end, we got 278 articles that were tagged as include and were moved forward to the next phase of full text screening. In the second phase, a more detailed full text screening of the 278 publications were made. In this phase, we particularly made sure to focus on the study design, and all the 278 studies went in a paired tagging process. So the goal here was to identify studies that used pre-post control experimental design. Since this design was particularly crucial for us for drawing valid conclusions about the effectiveness of AI chatbots in cognitive learning outcomes. To manage this phase, as I mentioned before, we did the tagging in two pairs of research process. So one pair of researchers reviewed 133 articles and the other pair of researchers reviewed 145 articles. So working in pairs allowed us to increase the accuracy and reliability while also reducing the individual bias. During this paired review, 174 articles were eliminated because they did not meet the required design criteria. And as a result, we got 104 articles that remained and proceeded to phase 3, which is the final stage of full text coding. So in phase 3, we coded the full text. Sorry, we coded the 104 articles based on a code book, and then which had like particular variables, and resulted in 35 articles which focused on the cognitive domain learning outcomes with controlled experimental pre and post design. So this is the codebook variables that we coded in order to extract all the information that is required for us to successfully complete this meta-analysis. So we started by coding the title of the article, followed by the author names, and we also coded about the publication type, which is a categorical variable. We had 3 categories which fall under journal article, conference proceedings, dissertation, or thesis. And next is the publication name. We coded the name of the specific journal article or a conference or a university that specifically had this particular dissertation. And next we coded the publication year along with the country. We specifically coded the country name to make sure like how many studies were conducted in different parts of the world. And next we coded a categorical classroom setting, which is a categorical variable containing formal and informal settings. Next, we also noted down the description of settings, particularly how the classroom was placed. We also coded about the description of the intervention. We tried to include about the purpose of the study or the pedagogical approach that that was mentioned in the study. Next, we saw the educational level, which is again a categorical variable. In this, we coded 10 different categories of educational level, and all these 10 different categories were also obtained from the literature. And next, we also coded about the duration of the entire study, again a categorical variable. All these categories were again based on the literature that was already available. And next, we coded the modality of the study. We had two categories for this. The first one is the blended learning. In this study, the meaning of blended learning that we inferred was that the chatbot must be used in a face-to-face classroom setting. And the other one is a fully online setting, which means there was no in-person interaction, and the involvement of chatbot and the instruction was completely online. Next, we coded the types of chatbot, which is again a categorical variable. All these four categories, such as teach, peer, teachable, and motivational, was based on the literature itself, which was already published before in a couple of meta-analysis articles. So the teach chatbot played the role of human teachers that can present instructions, illustrate examples, ask questions, and provide immediate feedback. The second category was peer. The peer chatbot was considered to serve as an learning mates for students to encourage peer-to-peer interactions. And the third category was teachable, which acts as a novice itself and asks the students to teach about any topic and guide them along the learning route. And last one was the motivational, which serves as a companion to students and encourage positive behavior and learning. The next variable that we coded was again a categorical variable, which is interaction mode. So we had text-based, voice-based, and the third category is whether the chatbot combines both text-based and voice-based interaction mode. And the other one, the next category is deployment, again a categorical variable. We had web-based, standalone, and app integrated. So we came across specific app integrated chatbots such as WhatsApp integrated ones. To code that, we had this specific category. And the next one is the research design, again a categorical variable. We had focused on true experimental or the quasi-experimental studies. Next one, we had subject domain. And again, all these categories were obtained from the literature itself. So we coded each subject domain based on all these categories available. And next is the description of the subject or course. We coded the specific name of the subject that was mentioned in the article. And since we also had a category called as other, we wanted to make sure to record the specific subject. So this is a variable that was used for this specific use. And next we coded about the item used to measure, which is again a categorical variable. We had four categories, which is multiple choice questions, Likert scale, free response, or some articles did not report it. So we wanted to record that too. So we had a separate category for that. And we also had had recorded the specific information about the established scale used, if applicable. For example, one of the study might have used an introductory programming concept inventories. So we had to record that for further analysis. And next, we included the type of measurement, which is again a categorical variable. We had two categories, whether it's self-reported or directly measured. And since we focused on cognitive domain measures, we also wanted to record the specific domain measurement variable, something like knowledge test or achievement test. So in order to record that, we use this specific variable. And next is the nature of task, which is again a categorical variable. We had two categories, which is classroom activity and supplementary activity, something like after school activity. And next, we wanted to record the group details because we need all the values specific to that group. So we included both control and experimental or treatment, and included all the reported values such as pre-test sample size, pre-test mean, pre-test standard deviation, post-test post-test sample size, post-test mean, post-test standard deviation. And along with that, we also noticed a few articles which coded their Cohen's d or Hedges d effect sizes. We also made sure to include those. So this extensive extraction of all the variables helped us to decide on the nature of articles and its the nature of effect that the chatbots had on learning outcomes of the students.
So now it's time to talk about results, interesting results. So talking about distribution of years, as you can see, most of the studies were published within the last 2 years, and this can show a growth of publication in AI chatbots. And talking about distribution of publication types, you can see the majority of studies out of 35 studies, 31 were published in journal articles. Although we included gray literature, we cannot see any dissertations within these publication types. And also talking about educational levels, we use OECD classification of educational levels, which is based off international standard classification of educational level, and it provides an international comparable for definition of education. And as you can see, out of 35, 24 of the articles were within higher education and undergraduate level. And the second top one is within upper secondary education. And very less are published within the primary education and lower secondary education. And we didn't have any publication in doctoral level. And talking about the student disciplines, that's interesting. Out of 35 studies, 21 were focused on language learning, and the second one was health, and most of the studies were focused on the health field, and the third one was computer science. And surprisingly, one of the codes, as Priya mentioned, was social science, and we didn't have any publication in social science, such as teacher education and these fields. And as you can see, most of the publications were focused in the formal setting, 33 out of 35, and that's also interesting. And this is the overall effect of AI chatbot. And we want to explore the results. Okay, so as you can see on the right figure, we have the forest plot with 96 effect sizes combined into 35 studies. And the order is based on first author's last name and year. As you can see, and my colleague Loraine mentioned, those small boxes are estimate effect sizes for each single study. And the horizontal line that you can see shows the confidence interval. At the lower part of the figure, we have the pooled effect size, the overall effect size. And as you can see in this figure, some of the studies yielded negative effect size, which are those at the left side of the vertical line, and some of them yielded positive effect size, which are in the right side of the vertical line. However, not all of them yielded significant, statistically significant effect. The overall effect size was 0.369, which counts as a moderate effect size with a confidence interval ranging from 0.160 to 0.578. And we provided Q statistics, which test the null hypothesis that all of the studies have a common true effect size. As you can see, the p-value is statistically significant, which is 0.003. So we can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that all of the studies didn't have a common true effect size, which shows that we use the random effect model appropriately. And This is the funnel plot talking about the publication bias. As you can see, the plot demonstrates the residual effect size on the x-axis, and it plots against the precision or standard error. And as you can see, most of the studies are clustered around the top of this funnel plot because basically, those studies with a small sample size and more precision are clustered around the top of the funnel. And this is exactly what we had in our studies. Most of the studies had small sample sizes like 10, 12. So that's why we have most of this clustering at the top and very few on the bottom. And as you can see, there is a symmetrical plot and there is no significant asymmetry, which one of the criteria to say that publication bias was met, and there was not any publication bias. And that's it. Time for conclusion.
Okay, so thank you, Nazanin. As Nazanin just mentioned, the overall effect size of AI chatbot used on cognitive learning outcomes was 0.36, which is a moderate positive effect. And this is kind of interesting because if you remember, the past meta-analysis on this topic indicated that overall effect size is around 0.7. This could be due to the fact that we had much more effect sizes coming from many studies, so that so that could be one reason for that, and we are still wanting to figure it out. And we had a lot of moderators, but still this work is in progress. So we are looking forward to continue analyzing the impact of the moderating variables.
Thank you, Soomin. We know, so give me what's the notes. Okay. Give me one game. Sorry, guys. I want to review some notes first. We have, several issues with meta-analysis that we need to address. We cannot say, that this is a perfect method because nothing is perfect in life. So from the standpoint, of critiques, we have to face that we have the reductionist fallacy here. And this critique arises from the attempt to encapsulate the multidimensionality, heterogeneity of the research domain into a single pool effect size. These critiques emphasize, the theoretical limitation of a meta-analysis in handling epistemic complexity. And this is incredibly important, in social science, where a singular statistic, for example, the mean effect size, failed to capture the full spectrum of evidence, potentially leading to oversimplification in fields in high inter-study variability. The other thing, is what Nazanin mentioned, the publication bias. My systematically distort inference as the meta-analytic sample is biased towards significant findings. We know that all the different fields suffer from publication bias. So this is something that we have to address here. We use it, the plots and our data to try to minimize it. However, the data depend of the articles that are published. The other critique is the methodological heterogeneity, incorporating various, study designs, population interventions, and outcome measures might violate the homogeneity assumption required for fixed effects models. And what we do, is try to correct this, through random effects models. But even though we try to account for the variance, this often fail, to resolve underlying conceptual incongruities. The fidelity is other problem. The integrity of the synthesis, might be affected, for the quality of the data that we are analyzing. So we depend, of the quality of the study. So we don't pick, necessarily, the way that the data is portrayed. So fidelity is going to be affected about this. And we need to consider this, as a huge problem. The other is selective omission bias. There are multiple limitations when defining inclusion-exclusion criteria. This is also a problem of systematic review in general. But for example, it might exclude seminal or high-impact studies. Other examples, from selective omission bias is language. As you notice, all of this group, all the team, we are foreigner students. We don't speak English as a first language, not even as a second in some cases. So in our study, we just include, the one that is common, the language that is English, that is common to all of us. So this is a good example, of selective omission bias. And finally, and this is all upon us, is a poor execution, of the meta-analytic procedure, including, for example, deficient heterogeneity assessment, inadequate sensitivity analysis, or neglected, for example, some subgroups that are important to explore, and all of those, are going to affect the reliability of our studies and our results. Soomin?
Oops. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Loraine. So keep that in mind so that you don't trust our results too much. So what is next? So talking about the extending the landscape of AI chatbot research. So far we have only analyzed the overall effect size, and this was not what we planned, but apparently meta-analysis is so time consuming, and also you need to make a lot of decisions during the process. And because we gave you a great description of how we made decision at each point of the meta-analysis, hope this walkthrough kind of helped you understand like what kind of decision you need to make. Like for instance, like what kind of study design you would like to include for your meta-analysis, and what kind of control group you're looking for. So those all decisions should is the areas that calls for our attention. And in our case, we are going to reclassify our outcomes using Bloom's taxonomy to explore the nuanced effects. So in many studies, they only combine all the cognitive outcomes or affective outcomes as one dependent variable, and we believe that it can bring us more nuanced understanding if we classify our outcomes into groups, so that how the effect of AI chatbot differs depending whether like when we are focusing on lower level or higher levels of the learning outcomes presented in the taxonomy of Bloom's taxonomy. And also, as we mentioned, there's only limited meta-analysis that are addressing the moderating variables that are focusing on instructional design aspect. And more specifically, we are trying to focus on the task type. For instance, like is AI chatbot more helpful or more effective in authentic learning tasks, or is it more effective for like retrieval focused practice tasks? So those are the things, one of the things that we are focusing on, as well as the chatbot role, including teaching teachable peer AI chatbots that might potentially have influence on the effectiveness of AI chatbots. And like we mentioned, we already coded for some areas like domain, educational level, duration, and interaction mode, so it will also be explored. Thank you for listening for such a long presentation, and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. So it looks like we have about 10 minutes or so we can take a couple questions. I know one question that has been asked was about if there's a meta-analysis, if it's available for preprint or published. Soomin, can you share briefly what your publication plans are for this work?
You mentioned ACT.
Oh, yeah, we are going to present it in the AACT, which is upcoming in this month. When is it? Yeah, in 2 weeks. So hope we can meet there, and hopefully we'll have like more analysis conducted by then. So that's one venue where, yeah, you can check
That's
out.
not the question is about publication. Can you
Okay.
share what your plans are for publishing the findings? That's what the question is about.
You don't have the concrete deadline yet? Yeah. But hopefully by end of this year, hopefully, yeah, that's our hope.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um,
There's another question that I'm going to add to the chat. So
okay.
can you briefly explain what factors most significantly influence the effectiveness of chatbots in improving student learning and engagement? And how might institutions strategically design chatbot implementations that go beyond transactional support to foster meaningful academic and emotional connection? Do you have any thoughts on that?
We haven't actually done the moderating analysis yet, but this is why we want to focus on more instructional aspects of AI chatbots, because there are several meta-analyses, as we have mentioned, around the domains and the types of chatbots, but we don't really know like how we can foster meaningful academic and emotional connection by using the chatbot. So that's actually, I believe, is one area to explore in the future. Huh?
It's for the second article, actually. We divided the cognitive.
Oh yeah, and actually, yeah, thank you. And we are actually planning on doing additional study using this data about these more narrative aspects of the AI effectiveness empirical studies. So hopefully we can provide some implications on the future. Thank you for asking question.
Great. Are there any other questions? You can add them either to the Whova app or you can add them into the chat in Zoom. We have about 10 minutes left in this session. You did such a good job. You left everyone speechless. There's no questions. So a question came in. Do you have any personal experience using the chat tools that were mentioned in the studies? If so, what are your thoughts on those tools being called quote unquote teachers?
What's the question? Sorry, can you say that again?
Do you have any experience using the chat tools that were included in the studies? If so, what are your thoughts on those tools being called teachers?
Oh. So in our studies, there were some of them used ChatGPT, which I believe most of the people know in this room at least. And there are some others where they used customized chatbot where the researchers or instructor kind of customize it to their own specific setting. And I mean, we are always trying to, our team's approach is to always to keep the instructor in the loop so that we don't only rely on the chatbots for instructions, not only for the instructions for the students, but also like throughout the learning process. And the way we, uh, and yes, that's why we, in part of our meta-analysis, I mean, it's going to be part of our more of narrative analysis, but the part that we are trying to focus on is also about like how teachers intervene in the process. Because for instance, whether they like for which activity they use it or for what purposes they're using it is not itself is actually coming as a result of instructional decisions that instructors make. So we believe that it shouldn't be part of there should be human touch that where they make pedagogically sound decisions to help students make use of AI chatbots better, especially because these days there are like many studies coming out that criticize the AI chatbots effectiveness, especially for higher order thinking skills, where like people say it kind of hampers students' critical thinking. So that's also something that we should consider when we integrate chatbots into our classroom.
You might mention the study modes that are available in a lot of the tools now.
Oh, yeah, and so there's also a study mode that is available. I've actually tried it myself using ChatGPT too, where you can use it for your study purposes. So that's something that is coming inside of the chatbot design that could be also helpful for your personal use of AI chatbot for your studying, if that helps.
Well, thank you again to the presenters. Since looks like there's no other questions on either Hula app or Zoom, we will end a couple minutes early and give you 5 minutes back in your schedule. So again, thank you to the presenters. We really appreciate your insights. It was fantastic.